that's something interesting that I'd like to talk to you about is the rate of fat loss. Because I've heard, some people say you had a podcast where you're talking about, going on a very, like a very low calorie diet for a certain amount of time. You even talk about fasting. And I think that's a good segue into the, I sent you that email with some topics I wanted to get into. And you said that we've kind of, like, in my opinion, I get really sick of seeing these people kind of like shitting on low carb and fasting. And I get it. I get it to a certain extent, because a lot of people have, put these things up on a pedestal saying they're the only way to lose weight, or, they kind of put like magical qualities onto fasting and low carb. But for me, like we're talking about my cut, fasting has definitely been a tool that has been useful, because if I were to eat, 800 calories before 1 p.m., chances are I'm going to, I'm not going to be able to control my hunger as well. And I'd rather be hungrier in the morning rather than hungrier before I go to bed. So I'm curious what you think about like some of these people who are shitting on fasting and kind of like virtue signaling in that regard.
Yeah. So I think people tend to get very involved in their camps. So they have their own sort of way of doing things, and they get very insular about that. And nowadays, it's not enough to have your own way of doing things and be happy with that and having good results. You have to get online and tell everyone else how much they suck and how good you are, right? So I think that it's kind of an extension of that. So I've gone back and forth with fasting. I don't think it's the most optimal way to do things for most people. I think for most people who train and want to retain a great deal of muscle, but it has its uses. And this is what I put forward, because I think a lot of people, and part of what you mentioned, the podcast and the sort of the mode of thinking I was in, I went through a whole long spell of really not enjoying some of the material people were putting out in the evidence-based space, because they were really shitting on a lot of practices which have a purpose. So a lot of anti-keto stuff, a lot of anti-fasting stuff. And again, I'm no keto advocate, and I'm not really a massive fasting advocate, but I think they have their places, and they can be used in certain points for certain people. And those people, if it works for them, they might think this is the best thing ever, and they might get online and on the comments in your podcast and go, Faz is full of crap, like fasting is the best thing ever, and why has he stopped fasting? But it's just for them. They might, later down the road, it might stop working for them, they might move on. But the point is, I think these are all tools, and they have their use. They have their uses. And I think we just need to be a bit more open. Fasting was something which I've done for probably 12-ish years on and off. Now, it's helped me out in many cases with, say, appetite control and things like that. And it's got me on the right track. So when I was very overweight and I was quite fat when I was in my powerlifter days, it was something that helped me to snap out of those eating habits quite quickly as I moved into the transition towards being a bodybuilder. Now, if I had never tried fasting ever, then I imagine that transition would have been that much more difficult. And I just think if you have anything like fasting, keto, sumo deadlifts rather than conventional, let's broaden it out, and you've got somebody online just shitting on it constantly, you're going to have one or two people who just aren't going to try it. Now, let's just imagine, well, you're that one guy who doesn't try sumo because Chris Bumstead said it's cheating or whatever, whatever it is, whatever he said. Maybe you're really suited to the sumo deadlift rather than a conventional, and you never try it, because when you go online, you have all these people who are either professionals or evidence-based fitness pros who are just shitting on it at every possible opportunity. There's a few guys in the evidence-based space who do that. And while I like their general material, and I understand why they do it, because generally most people don't have a great response to keto, I can understand, or fasting, I can understand, but some people do, and it's a tool that can be used. So I think what happens is, Damien, if you work with enough people for long enough, you start to look for results over tribalism. I really have no massive allegiance to any one method. I like to get results. So we try things and we just look at what gets people results. And based on people's personality types, you can tell a lot, you can tell quite a lot. If you're having a brief chat with them, you can tell quite a lot. Everyone's an individual, of course, but you can start to look at these sort of broad Yeah, just broad trends, and you can suggest things for people which more often than not work. And then it's just a case of trying things. But yeah, that's my thoughts on it. I'm not a particularly massive fasting advocate or keto advocate anymore. I just think I'm results first because I'm a coach. That's my thing. Yeah.
Well, I know for me personally, especially when you're like a little bit more ignorant to things and you're just starting out, you'll fall into certain camps. When you go online and you're looking up fitness stuff, and some guy you look up to because he's big and strong says something, and you just take it as gospel immediately. And that happened to me many times along the way, whether it be in the beginning when I got kind of sucked into the CrossFit functional fitness only bro kind of thing, where it was like, oh, don't use a machine, machines are bad, or don't use this. So I would just get trapped in these weird dogmas, and it would limit me. So it's just to me, it's like, it's important to be open to everything. And yeah, I get why people shit on certain things, but like you said, it's very individual. And I think people need to like just avoid dogmatism in health and fitness.
My question to you is, when at the time you were really into CrossFit and functional training, were you having a good time? Did you enjoy it?
I did at the time. Yeah. Eventually I got to a point though where I stopped enjoying it, and I wasn't really progressing in the way like when I first started, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. Like this is me getting into training for the first time. But after a while, it started to, I realized that I wasn't getting the same progress as the guys who were doing bodybuilding training. And then I started thinking, opening up, trying new things. So yeah, I guess, I had fun, but then I just moved on to different things and opened my mind to other possibilities.
Yeah. But there's a lot to be said for enjoying yourself when you're doing it. And I think me looking back now on a lifting career of sort of over 20 years of competitive experience, a large part of what was great about it was I just had a great time. I met some really nice people. I had a great time. So there's a lot to be said for just enjoying yourself. So I'll never put anyone down if they are really into keto or really into CrossFit. If they're enjoying themselves, we only have Damien, we only have a short amount of time on this earth. And if you can do it spending stuff that you enjoy, then all the better, I think. So yeah, I think clearly you found, at a certain point, it wasn't really matching your goals, and it was a natural progression to move on, and that's cool. But there's definitely a lot to be said for enjoying yourself, for sure.
No, that's very important. And when you think about it, if you look at like the general population, most of them don't exercise, and most of them don't really think about what they eat too much. So even if someone's like eating in a way that, eating keto and actually, being mindful about what they're consuming in some way, shape, or form, they're still probably better off than the general obese population,
Yeah, and you think to yourself, okay, well, if that CrossFitter stopped doing CrossFit box work a couple of times a week, maybe got on a great routine, did some bodybuilding nutrition, he or she would be a lot further along in 5 years' time. And you think that, but then the way that I see it now is, would they stick to it? Would they really do it with enough passion to get the right results? Would they get better results just being at CrossFit because all their friends are at CrossFit? So it's such a balance. And I see that having coached now for 6 years, but having done the fitness thing for a long time, I see old friends of mine who I've known for 15 years who are into CrossFit and are really into it. I'm thinking of this one lady actually who's always struggled with her weight. And I think if she had just done some bodybuilding nutrition and done some bodybuilding, she would be in a lot better shape now that she's my age. But then I also think, I just can't judge people that harshly, because more than likely she wouldn't have stuck to it. She wouldn't have been happy doing it. And probably odds are, despite her still not being particularly happy with her shape, she's still happier doing CrossFit than nothing. So yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. It's just the way I think nowadays. Maybe I'm getting old.
No, that makes sense. Another thing I wanted to jump into was flexible dieting. And this is just my personal pet peeve. And, I'm a little bit biased in this regard. Like I put a big emphasis on, healthy eating. And, I don't really, I'll pick your brain on this, because to me, it's when people say like clean foods, I get why it's kind of a vague term, because a lot of people will like define certain things as dirty that aren't necessarily dirty. But I think it's like, we all know what's healthy, like meat, fruit, veggies, all that kind of stuff. And these people that say, you know, well, you can eat whatever you want as long as you're in a calorie deficit. I feel like, for one, that's maybe okay if you're someone who has a healthy relationship with food already established. If you have a healthy relationship with food, you can eat a slice of pizza and jump back on your diet, no problem. But for most people, it's like, you know, it's like telling an alcoholic, you know, you can drink the beer, but you can only have one. You know, it's like, what are your thoughts on that whole like flexible dieting thing? Like,
Yeah, so I think to answer this, I think I want to take you right back to the 90s, and in the 90s, Dorian Yates, the Mr. Olympia, he was just starting to experiment with the whole macros, nutrients type of thing, as well as meal planning. And at the time, I think it was Lee Labrada, who was the first bodybuilder back then to really get precise with the nutrition. His kid now competes, and he's very impressive. And he sort of taught Dorian got a hold of it and started counting his macros and all that stuff. And then while he was doing that, he was also doing the meal plan approach, and that really became quite mainstream. So into the 2000s, in the mainstream, it was all about sort of the meal plans, the Tupperware containers. So when I first started getting into training, if you weren't carrying your Tupperware container around, you weren't even really a serious bodybuilder. You know, fanny pack and a Tupperware container is what you needed. And it was always about 5 or 10 years behind what the bodybuilders were doing. So at the time, bodybuilders like Dorian had already established that macros and calories were fantastic. So as we went along, that sort of caught on the bodybuilding forums, and it was bodybuilding.com. The whole if it fits your macros kind of came about. And back in 2010, another 10 years later, if you weren't doing if it fits your macros and having protein and Pop-Tarts, you were just a dinosaur. So the internet did an amazing thing. It managed to take small local swings and just turn them global. Right, so people got burnt out on Tupperware containers. Then they got burnt out on pizza and Pop-Tarts. And now the latest thing is I think the latest thing is intuitive eating / sort of habit-based protocol. So just having good habits. So habits are, you know, useful because you can apply them everywhere. So this is the 3 main styles of dieting that I see, which is meal plans, macros and calories, and then habit-based eating. They're all sort of somewhat mixed together in people's approaches as well. So I think, like a lot of the mainstream, the trends that they follow tend to be about 5 to 10 years behind. And your average typical gym bro PT who 20 years ago would have been the same guy saying you got to have a Tupperware container is now the guy talking about you can fit anything into your macros because he's 10 years behind. In 10 years time, Damien, he's going to be the guy, the typical gym bro is going to be the guy saying, yeah, you just got to watch your habits. You just got to eat protein with every meal. You just got to be mindful. It's so, honestly, if you've been around for as long as I have, it's so predictable. The trends that are at the forefront of the industry, every average gym bro PT, your local Nookhead PT, is about 10 years behind. So that's why when you go onto Instagram right now, you see any number of just brainlet PTs, no hope PTs, just saying, yeah, you can just fit everything into your macros. And I don't like it because it's an exaggerated, perverted version of what the method of eating actually should be. And that is just a sensible deviation from your plan. That's all it should be. That's all it ever was. I had one guy, there's one PT around here who did that. He's never competed in his life. So he decided he would, and he's fairly gifted. He's a natural, but he's gifted. You can tell this guy is very genetically gifted. So he hired another coach who's also never prepped anyone. So that's a fantastic combination there. and all throughout the prep, his Instagram was full of these examples of him eating pizza and burgers and stuff. No, I knew this was going to be a train wreck. I could just tell. Because once you get down to contest prep conditions, you're very hungry, no matter what happens. And you just can't be flexible. So this guy was eating pizza and whatnot. And predictably what happened was he just binged his way right through the contest. Binged his way to the finishing line, looked terrible, binged out of it as well. Was having sort of challenges on his Instagram, like 10,000 calorie challenges, stuff like that. But the sad, and really bad. And the sad thing is he ended up looking worse after the rebound than he did before he started the prep. And he was filling up his Instagram with all these stories of saying, competition's bad for you. Like, you shouldn't do bodybuilding. It's bad for you. It's a dangerous sport. It gives you a bad relation with food. And if I took him more seriously, I guess I'd be a little bit angry about it because I love bodybuilding. I love sports. I love bodybuilding, I love powerlifting. It doesn't have to be done in a dangerous way. But that his method was so flawed right from the beginning. Stevie Wonder could see that this was going to happen. It was going to be a train wreck. And it was. So I think people like that, they give it a bad name because they're genetically tremendously gifted, but they are airheads. They have no knowledge. They have this really weird interpretation of what they think If It Fits Your Macros should be. Then they put it into practice in the most extreme circumstances, and predictably they fail. And then they're the victim. They're like, look at me, I'm the victim. Bodybuilding did this to me. I was just doing If It Fits Your Macros. I was doing the right thing. I had the right approach, but bodybuilding made me a victim. Like, please feel sorry for me. It's I don't use this word lightly because I'm not a very mean person, but it's pathetic. So yeah, that's how I feel about that.
No, that makes sense. Because I know for me personally, if I woke up and I ate a donut for breakfast and said, well, as long as I just stay within my caloric, as long as I just stay in a calorie deficit, I think that the type of food that you choose to consume though is going to help you with the calorie deficit. And not only that, but if you're going to look at even micronutrients, you talk about micronutrients, and, we can eat good diets, but not necessarily be getting in everything we need. And if you're eating 1,800 calories a day, you have, it's going to be harder for you to cover all bases when it comes to vitamins and minerals and whatnot. So if you're eating, nutrient devoid processed foods like donuts and croissants or whatever, then you're kind of setting yourself up. It's going to be a lot harder, and you're probably going to feel like shit. You want to eat like whole foods, stuff that's going to, cover all your micronutrient needs as well. Right.
Yeah. The average gym bro kind of somewhat gets the importance of fiber, I think, which is a good start. Yeah. But what they don't realize is there's a whole bunch of stuff which comes after that. There's a guy who you should maybe consider getting in your podcast, Marty Kendall from Australia. And he runs Optimizing Nutrition podcast. Genius, just a tremendously intelligent guy. But he's shown through his use of big data that the micronutrients, the big ones that I talk about, sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, actually have an appetite satiation effect if you get them to a certain level, which is tremendous. I mean, that's insane. So it's a direct effect of micronutrients actually halting your appetite. Wow. I think that's the first thing, which is incredible. The other thing is we have studies. I was looking at one yesterday, actually. I forget the name of it, but I'll message to you later if you remind me.
Yeah.
That depending on the food quality, so that is the fiber content and whether it's whole foods or whatever, we absorb more or less calories based on the quality of the food as well. So higher quality foods, we tend to not absorb as many calories from those foods. So it's not a big difference. It's maybe 30 to 100 calories per day, which is not much, but it's a difference. And certainly that's the average. There are people who respond much better. There are people who respond much worse. There are people who will eat a whole food diet, which is high in fiber, and which science has shown that the food has a certain calorie value and they absorb a lot less. When it comes to junk food and processed food, that value is typically not as great. You're pretty much absorbing as much as you're eating. Now, again, that's not something you want to base a diet on, but it's a nice bonus. If you add that together with the appetite satiety effect of the nutrients and the fiber, you've got a very robust model there. Have you ever heard of a book called The Dorito Effect?
No, I have not.
Have a read. It's really good. I've got it on Audible, but he goes into great depths in describing the fact that the soil is far less nutrient dense these days. This is very commonly known. Everyone talks about this nowadays. But he goes into good depth talking about this idea that we're actually, when we're searching for calories, we're actually searching for nutrition. A lot of us who walk around obese but always hungry, part of it is that mechanism. And that's part of the drive behind processed foods is actually they're nutrient devoid. And one of the reasons is even if you have a really good diet, the soil is so devoid of nutrients that you're always looking for more. This is part of my push when I talk on my channel about looking at nutrient amounts and supplementing with sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium. Those are the big ones which make a big difference. It's part of why I do it, because we're just not getting enough, even in the good food. So you can have your potatoes, have your apples and stuff, but you're still going to struggle. It's worth bearing in mind.
Yeah, that's interesting. You're kind of blowing my mind right now. I need to check these guys out. You also brought up an app in one of your podcasts, or some sort of tool you use to track micronutrients. What was that app called?
So it's called Chronometer.
Yeah.
Chronometer. It's really come along very nicely. About 5 years ago, it was very unfriendly to use. So it didn't really compare to Myfitnesspal because people didn't, as useful as it was, they lost a lot of customers because the interface just wasn't very nice. But now it's much better than Myfitnesspal. It's actually easier to use. Now, similar to Myfitnesspal, all you do is you just put in your food. But the key point, I think, what's the biggest problem with Myfitnesspal? It is because it's a sort of Wikipedia style database. Anyone can enter a value in. So if I put the value in for, say, milk, I can get it wrong. I can miss off the calcium. I can just mess it up completely, just like you would with a Wikipedia page, and it still gets accepted. Somebody's going to use it, and if enough people use it, it'll get in use. It'll become popular. With Chronometer, there's really only one entry per item. So, and they are vetted by the company. So you have to, it's a whole big long form. If you want to add something, you send it off to the makers, they vet it, check it out, and then they only add it when it's verified. So the big advantage is if you're putting in 3 ounces of cheese, 2 slices of bread, and 20 grams of peanut butter, assuming you've weighed it out, it's all going to be completely accurate. Whatever you get is going to be accurate. Therefore, Chronometer can then give you some really cool tools looking at your daily micronutrient intake, and it just makes life so much easier because, again, just like Myfitnesspal, all you do is you add in your food, it does the rest. It's just really useful.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely look into that. It's interesting. You talk about, you're talking about like eating whole foods and versus processed foods, and how you actually don't you don't take in as many calories with the whole foods. But then you have these people online who will say like, well, everything is processed. It's because it's the straw man. Well, it's like, well, like, what do you mean everything's processed? Yes, there's a process of putting lettuce in a bag or spinach in a bag and, getting it to the grocery store. But you can't tell me that like, it's disingenuous to say like everything is processed. You know what I'm saying? Like, of course it is, but there's a big difference between Pop-Tarts and, vegetables in a bag.
I think it's definitely disingenuous to use that as a means of dismissing somebody's argument. Like, we all pretty much are on the same, but we're just saying processed food as shorthand. We know, or just like somebody would say bad food, it's shorthand.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the internet went through this whole phase of not calling cheat meals because apparently that would create eating disorders, and now we call them free meals? Do you remember that? That was a whole big thing.
How long ago
wow.
was that?
Overnight, we have solved eating disorders, ladies and gentlemen. We'd call them free meals now. Wow. But it's these little finicky. This is the whole virtue signaling thing that I dislike. It's this, let's call it something else so we can dismiss somebody's argument. Like, it is of course disingenuous to say, processed versus unprocessed foods, but what we're really talking about is degrees of processing. That's all.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's fine. And if we're having a conversation like this where we're going to be on for about an hour or so, we can talk in more detail. We don't really need to say processed versus non-processed, because unless you're literally going out to the garden and picking it off the vines yourself, there's going to be some degree of processing. We understand that.
Yeah.
But so I don't think that point. It's one of those really. It's just a really pedantic point of language. Really, it's all it is. What we're really talking about is the degree of processing. But anyway, yeah. So the studies are fairly clear on it. There's two main things. One is how many calories you're absorbing, which is a very minor thing. I don't want anyone to think that I think if you eat whole foods, you're just going to shit out whole apples and stuff like that. That's not the way it happens. It's literally the difference of maybe 30 to 100 calories per whole day. So it's not much. It's nothing to bank on. But there is an appetite satiety effect of the fiber. Each micronutrient has its own satiety level. Like calcium, magnesium has its own satiety level. We know this now. And so it does give you a very big draw for eating minimally processed foods. I tell you what's quite interesting as well is the difference of the whole going back to the tribalism thing. When I put up pictures of my regular meals, because I don't know if you've been on I know you're on my Instagram. I follow you as well. I put up my meals that I'm eating at the moment because I'm somewhat in a kind of prep, and it's mostly just chicken, veg, rice, all that kind of stuff. And they get some comments.
The basics.
The basics, yeah. The basics. But one guy posted, why don't you show us some naughty meals so we know you're human? And I just didn't get it, because I like my chicken and rice. I was going to reply back to him.
Yeah.
What do you mean, bro? I like my food. What are you trying to say? I like chicken and rice. I don't know what's wrong with chicken and rice. And then I posted a free meal that I had on Saturday night, and that got a lot more likes. It got a lot more sort of like posts, and people who don't normally like my posts were liking those posts. And I'm thinking, people are really obsessed by the difference between what they perceive as good food and bad food. It's almost like if Faz posts a cheat meal, that's it sort of like absolves me of my views.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. There's the psychological aspect of, oh wow, that guy who's super jacked on Instagram isn't perfect. You know, so then it's kind of like, well, I can keep eating like shit and feel good about myself. But they don't realize, you know, you're not eating that. That's like 10%, you know, like 90, like, there's a certain point where, let's just say you are someone who eats really well 90% of the time. You're working out, you know, you got your calories in check. If I want to go out and eat all you can eat sushi till my freaking head explodes, and like knowing I'll be right back on track tomorrow, it's not as big of a deal to someone who maybe doesn't have a good relationship with food. Because anecdotally, you know, I eat mostly whole foods. Like I eat really well. Like I would say I eat really well. Fruit, vegetables, meat. I eat like sourdough bread and honey for sweets and stuff like that. And when I was bulking, I was eating an insane amount of food, but I never, even when I got to a point where I bulked, and I got to about 20% body fat, and I did not go any higher than 20%. I actually like stalled on my weight gain, and I was just gorging on, you know, mostly whole foods. But if I wanted to take it up a notch and I wanted to, you know, push the realms of obesity, like for me to get to like 35%, I would have to include processed easy. Like I'd have to include Pop-Tarts. I'd have to start drinking pop. Like I'm not saying obviously you can get fat eating whatever type of food, but it's definitely harder to get like become obese eating natural whole foods.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of objectively true.
Oh yeah. And to your point about the whole topic, I think training your appetite is something we don't really talk about enough as well. So I spent a good 3 decades of my life just eating not particularly great foods because I was powerlifting and I was a lot heavier, I was a lot fatter, faces all bloated and stuff. And but it was great for your squats, you know. So when I got to eating bodybuilding, one of the things that I really took on board was having a much plainer diet. And you can train your appetite just the same way that most people have trained themselves to want hyperpalatable foods. You can train yourself to want a blander diet. So again, this goes back to my point about the chicken and rice, the meals on Instagram. I like my chicken and rice. I have my sushi rice, which I love. I have my hot sauce for my chicken. I have a recipe for my chicken on my YouTube that I use. And generally, it's fine. I look forward to my meals. So I think people underestimate this about having more of a 95% strict view on your diet, because you can train yourself to like those foods. Now, if you're constantly trying to fit pizza and chocolate into your diet, it sounds like a great idea. It sounds like, okay, I'm just going to be nice to myself. But I think in a lot of cases, if you have a bad relationship with food, as in you're constantly used to eating those and you almost have to have those, then all you're doing is you're just reigniting that desire for that food. And every other meal is not pizza. Every other meal is not chocolate. Every other meal is not, you know, whatever else that you like to eat. Whereas I think if you're constantly eating reasonably good foods, again, I'm not going to put down my chicken and rice. It's bloody delicious. But, you know, if you're eating stuff, you can train yourself to like that stuff over the course of time. And if you've been in a position where, say, you're my age and you have had decades of bad eating, then it might take longer. If you're your age, it might take less time. And I find that actually, I find older clients a lot harder to work with because there's much more of a backlog of habits you have to undo for longer periods of time. But yeah, you can train yourself to be that annoying guy who likes eating chicken and rice. Like, it can happen. You be that guy. Makes life easier.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when you need to learn how to cook and prepare things in a way that tastes great. You know, I don't like chicken and rice is absolutely delicious. You know, I use onions, garlic, different kind of spices. I'm like you. I don't see a problem. I don't eat anything I don't like to eat. Like, I think there's this weird idea that, you know, bodybuilders or people who are, you know, interested in health and fitness in any capacity, we torture ourselves. But that's not the case at all. Like, it's like a stereotype, like we're depriving ourselves, and maybe to a certain extent, you know, I think I've never done a bodybuilding prep. I don't necessarily have an interest to like go sub 10%. I feel like maybe that would be torturing myself at that point. But I also appreciate the mental, like just the discipline to get to that point. And, you know, as someone who's in a cut right now, I'm actually curious, what's the lowest body fat percentage you managed to get to when you were, 'cause you got that picture on your YouTube where you're just absolutely peeled.
Yeah, I think that was about 2 weeks out of a show. So whatever I was at the show, really, I didn't Dexter it. I think I Tanita scaled it, you know, the electronic bioimpedance scans, the ones you have at home. I think it put me at like 20% body fat, something like that. So they don't really work that well.
I don't think you're at 20%.
No, they don't really work that well. I mean, I would guess I was probably 8 to 9. I don't think I was like 6 or anything like that. I think I definitely could have been leaner. But it was good enough for stage, you know. I think it was a fun competition. The feedback I got at the time was the only reason the guy who came first won was structure wise, he was just bigger. So I think I packed more muscle on my frame, but he just had a better frame. He was wider and stuff. So and he deserved it. He had a great physique. But yeah, what were we talking about?
Well, just, you know, cutting down your body fat in general. Like let's just have a conversation about body fat percentage.
Oh,
because
I was going to say one more thing. I think because you mentioned bodybuilders torturing themselves. I think what is torture though is getting down to a really low body fat percentage and eating the foods that you need to, but constantly giving yourself a glimmer of the chocolate, the crisps, the pizza. That's really torture. And you know that hope is what gives you torture. If you just constantly eating the bland vegetables, chicken, that you just get you settle into it. Yeah, for sure. That was a point I was thinking I was going to mention.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I personally think that's torture myself, but yeah, anyway, carry on.
Well, that anecdotally, I can attest to that, because right now I'm just eating all good foods, you know, Greek yogurt, berries, vegetables, meat, lean meats, and just keeping it. I don't want to, maybe I like on this diet I have, cause it's been like 4 months at this point. And I have had a few days where I've just pushed the envelope a little bit. But yeah, I totally agree that if I was trying to like fit in all these like naughty foods while I'm trying to diet, it wouldn't work out very well for me.
And you know what the cool thing is, once you finish your diet and you want to transition into, say, maintenance for a while, then back up to a bulk, it's going to be a far easier transition for you, because your drive for those highly placeable foods just isn't going to be as high as somebody who's had them in the whole time, which is what this local lad did. So, it's still high, don't get me wrong. Once the date is over, once you think you're finished, there's still a pull to eat a lot of crap. But it'll be a lot less. Like for me, after my show, I had no binge. There was nothing. I ate what I wanted to do the night of the show, which is Sunday. Right after the show, I went for a burger and fries with my best friends who were there, who came up to see me. That evening, I ate what I wanted to do. Monday morning, I was back on my diet. So, and I was back in the gym, actually. Although I did fall asleep at the gym because I was so tired. But yeah, so, you know, you're doing yourself a favor, I think, because you'll be far less likely to binge, and you can utilize that. You can add in those highly palatable foods slowly. You almost periodize the reintroduction of those highly palatable foods. You don't have to have them all at once. In the first month, you can add in a few bits you like. Next month, a few more bits, and then by month 3, you know, you're free access to whatever you want to eat, and you can really utilize that. Utilize your stomach volume, utilize your highly sensitive taste buds to have a nice smooth transition into an off season.
I know there's one thing in particular that I noticed is I took like a very small diet break where I just, for about a week, I ate maintenance and I kind of carved up again just to give myself a little bit of a break. And I went to the gym and I just got a disgusting pump. Like my
best.
And I was like, whoa, because I wasn't like is that insulin sensitive? I don't know the mechanism, but for some reason I was just like feeling so good. And it was like a pump that I hadn't really experienced before. And I'm pretty excited to like go back to maintenance and start upping my carbs and just feeling good in the gym again. I don't feel terrible in the gym, but training in a deficit does get pretty shitty after a while.
Well, that shows you're doing it right. It shows you're doing it right. So here's the cool thing. If you diet down to a really lean body fat, but you keep the carbs in, so you're not doing anything like keto, even if you keep the carbs in on a sporadic basis, so you have some high days, some medium days, whatever, but you keep your body used to eating carbs, your body will become more insulin sensitive as you diet down. That's almost inevitable. When you reintroduce carbs, all of that will go to the muscles pretty much. And as long as you're training still, it's a great feeling. Every bodybuilder knows that feeling coming out of a cut where you're just ridiculously full. Like I do, I personally do high days, low days, and medium days. And the high day is fantastic because right after the high day, I know I'm going to get just a sick pump for the next couple of days. And that's even on a diet. So they're very much worth doing. I with all my clients who want to get into contest shape, I do have high and low days because inherently the idea is if they want to get in contest shape, they are prepared to put in the extra effort to have different caloric intakes and different styles of eating on different days. So generally what I'll do is I'll start off with 1 or 2 low days, followed by the rest as in high days. Then we'll gradually cut down. In the end, we try and get it to the point where all of the training days are either medium or high days, and then the off days are low days. Occasionally we need to go beyond that. Maybe there's just, 1 high day, maybe 1 or 2 medium days and the rest low days. But in general, I think it's a good idea to vary things. And the variety seems to help with this feeling you're getting, which is you tend to have a good feeling with that. Carbs are an interesting one in the body. So they're very useful. And the body stores calories in 3 different ways. So we have protein, obviously gets stored as muscle and repair for various things. Carbs get stored as glycogen, fat gets stored in your fat stores. So it's a broad generalization, but generally that's what happens. Alcohol immediately gets burnt off, it doesn't get stored. Now, we can set up a situation where if you are mostly carb depleted all week, and then you have a high day where you're eating a lot more carbs, but keeping the fat super low, the carbs will preferentially go to refilling glycogen stores and not to fat. So we have this amazing situation where temporarily those carbs all go towards performance. And so when I'm doing contest prep for clients, I very much prioritize macros over calories in a sense. Like the macros are way more important than just overall calories. For a lot of my Gen Pop clients, it's just like do 2,000 calories, eat however you want to eat, just get your protein. And you often hear this prescription, match your protein, then just worry about calories. And that's fine, it's fine. But when you're getting down to the level of body fat that you're moving into, and also my contest prep clients, you can make a visible difference and a tangible difference if you play around mostly with carbohydrate intakes and keeping fat intakes minimum. Yeah. It has a big difference for exactly the reason you've described.
Yeah. One thing I noticed too is, when you're cutting and maybe you're a little lower carb, you start to look pretty flat. And then as soon as you introduce those carbs again, you're like, wow, I actually do look pretty jacked still. Like you do look a little bit different when you're, I don't know. Also, I'm not super science based, but I don't know what that mechanism is. I guess it's just the glycogen makes your muscles look fuller.
Yeah, I mean the body can create glycogen from like protein or other things, but in general, and fat stores. But in general, if you are actually eating carbs, the body can hold on to more glycogen. So the body will restore glycogen to a minimal amount almost overnight. It's just that it's a very small amount. It's kind of like a bare bones basic amount of glycogen, whereas if you're actually eating carbs, you can store a lot more. There's this sort of super compensation that happens. So yeah, I'm not a massive fan of low carb diets overall. I did do it for a while. The other thing about low carb diets is you get involved in the whole low carb space on Instagram and stuff, and you can get pretty deep into that rabbit hole. I was following some guys who were just a train wreck, and you do start to see, going back to the tribalism thing, you do start to see why some of these fitness evidence-based guys really trash on keto, because some of the keto guys out there, some of the low carb guys in the space, the degree of quackery is insane. And you start to see when people have been influenced by this, because they start to make posts about like fucking apple cider vinegar and absorbing their calories and like starting the day with a morning routine. It's just like, it's so like,
I've definitely fallen down that rabbit hole early on, just because it was kind of the thing that was super popular when I was getting into it. So I was like,
we all have.
But eventually, you slowly start to realize this is kind of whack.
Yeah. Some of them really, they all have books to sell. All of them, without fail, they all have books to sell. So I'm not a massive fan of that space. I think that you can get very into that rabbit hole, and they do the same. They're all very anti-government, which I think plays off the general sentiment over the last few years that everyone is. A lot of people are quite anti-government, and there's a distrust more so than there was maybe 20 years ago. So they play off that, and they play off a number of other things to do with like animals and the welfare of animals and stuff like that. So there's a lot of eating meat, and then which is fine, great. I'm a big fan of eating meat, but then it sort of starts to go into the meat's way more important than vegetables. We shouldn't eat vegetables. Some vegetables are bad for you, and it's just like
where does that even come? Where does that even come from? The whole I personally feel I eat vegetables, fruit. I even eat bread. I feel great too. I don't get why the whole anti-vegetable thing. Like, where is the science?
They use a very common mistake in sort of science-based circles, which is they use mechanistic arguments to base their point of view on. So a mechanistic argument finds some small study which finds some minute effect of vegetables in like the larva which lives on a rat, and they extrapolate that to humans. So it's not even a human outcome. It's not even anything tangible for humans. It's just like some weird mechanism they found and they say this is the reason, like this cycle, the Randall cycle or whatever, and this is it. Like this is why we're going to eat this way. But when you look at actual human trials and the befores and afters, we don't get the same effect. And so there's a lot to do with like insulin and stuff, whereas people, the same basic mistake that gets made over and over again is mechanistic arguments over actual observation. And so a lot of what they warn people against, it's stuff which you wouldn't actually see in real life. It just happens in a laboratory in a very specific setting under a very specific condition with an animal, or there's a potential textbook mechanism for why this might happen. And so they're like, oh, this might happen, better not do it. But if you look at the actual outcomes, when humans do eat vegetables or they do, have high carbohydrate intakes, we don't see that. It's what they call mechanistic arguments. They find something out of a textbook and they go, this should be a problem, when it's not. It's like the whole insulin thing. People will go on and on about how high carbohydrate intakes will wreck insulin sensitivity, when it's just not true. It's not the way that diabetes actually occurs. We know now diabetes is a combination of, it's mostly just overfeeding, and that overfeeding can come from fats and it can come from carbohydrates. And now we have something called the twin cycle hypothesis of diabetes, which looks at both methods for how the body ends up being overloaded and gets diabetic, and that is excess sugar, but also excess saturated fat clogging up the liver, excess sugar destroying the insulin sensitivity. So there's a whole bunch of stuff which goes on. Essentially, it's most people focus on the sugars because most people will check their blood sugars. They just won't check their triglycerides. Like most people who are diabetic, they'll have out of whack blood sugars, but also to have the really, really bad triglycerides as well. But it's easier to check blood sugars. But blood sugars you check every day with your BG meter at home. Triglycerides you check every 3 months or every 6 months at your doctor when they do blood work. So but they focus on the wrong things. So again, it's the whole mechanistic thing. People and these quacks, they play on that, and people don't realize they play on it because they have books to sell. They have things to. So yeah, that's a bit of a pet peeve of mine, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a quick question: what do you think about the whole the pendulum swung from the demonization of fats, and now it's the demonization of carbs, and now I'm starting to see a little bit like people like warning about fats again, and I'm just kind of like, I personally don't have a fear around, if I'm eating eggs, I don't think I'm going to die. I got my blood work checked. And I eat a shit ton of eggs and saturated fat, not to like the extreme of like, I'm like putting coconut oil in my coffee. Although I used to do that back in the day because I thought that was, that's health, right?
Yeah.
But my cholesterol is perfect, optimal. My triglycerides are optimal. Do you think like what are your thoughts on saturated fat, and when do you think it's problematic?
So here's the crazy thing, right? Body fat is people don't like to hear this because they want to hear that X, Y, and Z is going to make them healthier. But body fat is pretty much the prime determinant of whether you're going to be healthy or not. People really don't like to hear that because that's the biggest thing that people find difficulty in changing. Like let's say a guy needs to get from 40% body fat, 20% body fat. That's a lot harder than giving up saturated fat. It's a lot harder than giving up eggs. It's a lot harder than giving up whatever, whatever is the current, trend, right? But usually that's the biggest thing. Typically, the leaner you are, the healthier you're going to be. Now, the really weird twist is for some people, they can get very lean doing keto and especially carnivore diet, and they can just wreck their blood work. So that says something. I mean, if you take a guy and get him lean on keto and carnivore, and even though he's got lean, he still wrecks his blood work. Well, that says something about the approach. Like,
why do you think that is? Is it just because of the lack of fiber and stuff? Because I don't necessarily think it's like that meat is bad for you. I think it's more just like what you're lacking.
Meat is definitely not bad for you. Definitely not. 100% on board for that. But I think generally what happens is these people tend to have a high degree of fats, and they'd have the lack of vegetables. It's just a very unbalanced diet, as evidenced by the fact you have to sort of supplement so many things with it. So I think there's a problem in this, because there'll be people listening to this who will vehemently disagree with me, and will be downvoting the podcast and
that's fine.
all sorts. That's fine. Right? All sorts. But it's because online you have a wide range of people who think that keto diet and carnivore is fine, and they get healthier from that, and they probably do. But a lot of these people are a lot heavier than you and I, and so getting from 400 pounds, 350 pounds, 300 pounds down to 220 to 250, however you do it, it's going to leave you with better blood work, leave you better health. A lot of these people aren't really going to want to hear this, but any non-stupid diet is going to benefit you getting down to, say, 250, 220 if you were 300 plus before. Like, I'm sorry, but it is.
Yeah.
And also, I'll just say this out now, you're not a diet expert, or really you should even have a public opinion on dieting for everyone if all you've ever accomplished is to get down, say, 220, 250. Like, that's not enough. Like, to get down to lean abs, that's when shit needs to be a lot more precise. So the number of people online who will be in the comments who will be saying, well, no, keto worked for me, I don't really entertain those as opinions which are worth listening to if they've just simply got from 50% body fat down to 30 or 25. That's not, like, it's great for them. I applaud them, hats off to them, but it's not something that is a model of nutrition for everyone else, because you are literally going from a highly diseased state to a barely normal one. And so it's a hard pill to swallow for these people, but they shouldn't be taken seriously for advice on that kind of thing. Getting from where they're at now to 180 pounds, 170 pounds, which is an actual close to, well, not even for that, for those people, maybe 20% body fat. That's going to be much more like, okay, now we can listen to your experience. And I'd be willing to bet a lot of them aren't going to be doing that with keto and carnivore. And so that's the thing. And if they do, probably their blood work will be a lot worse. So I think that's something to bear in mind when it comes to evaluating people's progress on diet. It's just, I mean, getting that, like for me, for example, getting down to 180 in stage shape, there's a lot more that I can give people having gone from 220 down to 180 than had I gone from, say, 260 to 220. Like anything which is non-stupid would have got me from 260 to 220.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds mean, and that's not my personality. I don't like to be, but I think people need to really just calm the shit down when it comes to giving the world diet recommendations when they've just barely breached non-obese. It's like
those are great points, because like it's like when you're quite bulked up, even if you're not necessarily super obese, like say you're like a little 20% body fat, it's pretty easy to lose the first 10 pounds or 5 pounds, but then these people who are, have 100 pounds to lose, they just need to clean things up a little bit, and they're going to start shedding the weight off. And it could be anything, as long as they just stop eating like a child, or I guess that's kind of rude to people, but I don't care.
Yeah. This is the thing. It's a hard conversation to have because you don't want to be rude. You know,
No.
I really don't, because I have as much sympathy as everyone for these people. But my point, and I think what we're both saying, I think, is that it just their opinion just shouldn't be used as a prescription for everybody to say, look, guys, keto or whatever diet they're doing is the best for everyone because I went from 350 to 250. Like, no one gives a shit, dude. You know?
And everyone I know who has done that, where they've done keto and they've lost 50 pounds, they always get it back. Because, like, are you not going to eat bananas forever? Are you going to stop eating bread? You know what I'm saying? Like,
but these people I'm talking about, they're all on Reddit. You know, like there's a ton of them on Reddit.
I try to avoid Reddit. That's a dark place.
Reddit nutrition is horrible. It's just terrible. Yeah, but yeah. So it's So I think what I've found, just as a broad sort of general prescription, bodybuilding nutrition as a whole, generally for me, is the best thing. And I think people sort of downplay it because of the whole steroid discussion. But putting that to one side, bodybuilding is basically an iteration of what has worked to get people the leanest and the most jacked for 60 years. It's a long-standing conversation of a long-standing evolution of what's worked. Like in the beginning, people were doing, you know, keto diets and all that type of stuff, and it evolved from there. It evolved to where we're at now. It's an amazing thing for us to be living in 2022. It's an amazing thing that we can see the evolution of 6 decades of bodybuilding nutrition. We can take advantage of that. We're in a great spot right now. So when people say, yeah, we should follow what people did in the 60s because they look great, I just think, should we really? Should we drive around in cars from the 1960s as well if we have like a long commute that day? Doesn't make any sense. Should we go and take a crap out in the outhouse because they used to do that in the 60s as well? You know, just like a bunch of stuff. It's very idealistic. But my point is really the modern incantation of a bodybuilding diet. So that is, on your plate, you should probably have a large amount of protein. You should probably have a large amount of veg, and then some type of starch and maybe a healthy fat. That should be the basis of most of your meals. And if you look at my food and my meals on Instagram, that's what it is for that reason. Because for me, it sounds simple. It sounds too good to be true. It's something that you can dismiss easily because, you know, dumb bodybuilders. But dumb bodybuilders have been doing this for 6 decades, and they've found a system that has worked. It's an iteration of what has worked.
No, that's interesting. And I know how, you know, some people will say, you know, bodybuilding, you're talking about people saying bodybuilding is an unhealthy sport, but honestly, if you're a natural bodybuilder and you're eating a well-balanced diet, you know, it's one of the healthiest things you could do. Here's
the analogy. So let's say you got a bunch of crackheads who are out in the park, right? Yeah. They're getting high. Like, well, you know what? Going out to the park is really unhealthy. Look at all these guys. They look gaunt. You know, they're crazy. It's not the park. It's the crack. So in the same way with
that's pretty funny.
In the same way with bodybuilding, it's not the support. It's the drugs.
Yeah.
Bodybuilding is a great hobby. It's a great sport. Yeah.
That makes sense. That's pretty funny. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, you know, ranges of body fat percentage and where, like, you know, Steve Shaw talks about this where, you know, he's all about the lean bulk so that you can bulk like, you know, 10 months of the year and then do a mini cut for 2 months. How can I, once I diet down to let's maybe discuss that. I want to diet down to a body fat percentage. Like I'm dieting from 20%. I've lost 20 pounds. I don't know what my body fat percentage is at. I guess I'll have to take a DEXA scan or something to figure that out. But what would be a good, like, as my main focus is just building muscle. I don't necessarily care about being super lean. Okay. But I do want to get pretty lean so that I can give myself room to do a nice lean bulk. What would be a good kind of like body fat percentage range of like cutting down to and then lean bulking, and also not bulking up too high because then you got to diet for longer? That's kind of something like that's a balance that needs to be struck. And I'm curious what your philosophy around that is.
It's a really good question. Really good question. I like that question because it's a lot of what I talk about with clients. So yeah, firstly, like, Steve is great. I love Steve. Me and Steve go back, God, how many years now? 15 years, I think.
Nice.
15 years. Yeah, he's a great guy. Love Steve. I do a similar sort of approach to him. So essentially, I would like to see you get down to being quite lean. I would say about 10% would be a good idea.
Oh, wow.
Just to the point, just to the point where, just to the point where you're going to start to struggle a little bit, where you're going to give me like the wide eye, So just to that point, I want you to be hating me a little bit, because I want you to have a couple of things, right? One is a more definite thing, which is, you pointed out, a runway for growth. I think that's a very undervalued thing. And I think that doesn't need explaining. If you can grow 20 pounds slowly over, say, 10 months, which is reasonable, then that's going to give you a lot more growth. Other thing is, I think it can probably good for your confidence to be leaner and more jacked. Like, you want to walk around looking like a bodybuilder. It's a hobby that you spend a lot of time on. You have this podcast and you train a lot. Third thing, which is something which is not discussed as much, and it tends to alienate people, is the whole P ratio thing. So the arguments currently right now in the scientific community are surrounding P ratio and whether that's actually a thing or not. I personally feel the science is pretty much a closed case on this, which says that the P ratio does not actually matter. But I kind of disagree. And I know that's not very science-based. You have to bow to the science. But I just think it's one of those things where science perhaps is not testing or seeing the whole picture. I don't know. All I'm saying is, I've just seen from a complex range of either physiological or potentially even psychological things, when you have people that just get to the point where they're just super heavy, and the idea is they're going to grow and grow and grow and really grow big, they just stop growing after a while. And again, I don't think there's really a massive explanation for this in science, because the scientific case, as put forward by Mene Henselman versus Greg Nuckols and Eric Trexler, it seems to be fairly closed case now that actually the P ratio thing is not a thing.
What is the P ratio exactly? What does that refer to?
It's a good question. Should explain that actually for the audience. So it's basically your partitioning ratio. So essentially, out of all the food that you eat on a given day, some of that will go towards fat stores, and some of that will go towards repair and building. Ideally, we want more to go to repair and building. That is the P ratio. In effect, it's how much your body composition is either positively or negatively affected by the food you eat. Like, we all know some guys who can eat burgers and fries and just be lean and jacked all year round. They have excellent partitioning ratios. We know some people who are naturally just have poor partitioning ratios. Training is probably the biggest lever towards improving your partitioning ratio. And so we all train, and a lot of us are on YouTube talking about how people should train very hard, this routine, that routine, extra volume, rest, recovery, all of that. It basically enhances your P ratio. P ratio is everything. It is the result of living, whether you're going to get a jack physique or not. And steroids, of course, improve that any number of degree. So that's what that is. It's the result of what. Now, we know from the research, it seems to be a pretty open and shut case, that it is mostly genetics. And the higher P ratios, people who can't put on much muscle and put on a lot of fat, they probably got that heavy because of the fact their P ratio is rubbish. So, like, we can't say they were heavy, or that we tested them when they're heavy and they've developed a poor P ratio. It's probably the fact that they were just genetically born with a bad P ratio. That's why they got heavy. Whereas a guy who's, say, genetically 160 pounds and shredded and always has been, is probably that way because genetically he has an excellent P ratio. If you follow the argument, that's the general idea. So that's the argument right now. I just think, from what I've seen in people who I've coached, I see people gaining better when they're leaner. I can't explain it, and I realize I'm going against the science, but it's just what I've seen. So I can't deny that. So I've seen in my clients and everyone I've worked with, once I've got them lean, they've grown better. Now, that could be a physiological reason, something that we're missing in the research, but it could also be a psychological reason. Like, I'll ask you, Damien, when you start bulking, when you get down to 10% and you message me and go, thanks for pushing me down 10%, when you get down to 10%, do you think as you bulk back up from 10 to 20, you're going to have a better handle on your daily food intake because you've been
Yeah,
You know,
definitely. Like, it's not even a question at that point, just because I've had to implement, dietary discipline to get to that point. So I'm not going to just like immediately start eating pizza and just trying to go crazy. And I've also learned a lot, just bulking as well, because, I bulked for a long time and I got pretty chubby. Like I got unnecessarily chubby. And I'm not going to make that mistake again, because I want to make sure I'm doing it properly. And so I don't have to, because dieting for 4 months, I'm already like, oh, I'm done. I don't want to have to diet for half the year. Right. So I want to set myself up and be disciplined. And now, like, going into my bulk, once I get down to a lower body fat percentage, I worked really hard on my bulk to eat a lot of food. And I know that like there's no way I'm going to like gain that rapidly again unless I try really hard.
Exactly. So to the point about the P ratio, is it a physiological mechanism or is it a psychological one like you're describing? Who knows? All I know is it's a thing. So I like that. To going back to your original question, I would like you to get down to pretty lean, about 10% is good. And then at that stage, you're not going to regain a lot of body fat. You're going to bounce around between 10, 20% body fat, never really getting that fat or out of shape. You're probably always going to see some semblance of abs, and you're going to grow for the next 10 to 15 years as a bodybuilder. People will recognize you as a bodybuilder, and in 5 years' time, you'll be a lot more jacked, and you'll still be lean. So that's my one goal. And I've got numerous transformations on my Instagram page of clients who have done this. Yeah. Get them lean first, and then they grow like crazy. And is it physiological? Is it psychological? But it's a thing. Yeah.
No, yeah, that's good. That's good to know. I think, there's an excuse. Some people use the excuse to bulk super dirty, because I did when I was bulking get quite strong, and one thing I'm happy about is, actually, this is something, I know we're at the hour mark, but if you got a little bit more time, I want to ask you this.
I've got time. Yeah.
You got time? Cool. Pushing progression on a cut. Because what happened is I bulked up and I got quite strong, whether I was like repping out, let's just take like dumbbell bench press or whatever. Like I'm repping out like 80s or 90s. And what I've noticed is when I'm cutting down, I haven't lost my strength, but my progression is pretty much like halted at this point. Like I'm training hard, but I'm just not quite like progressive overload has slowed down, except maybe on movements like pull-ups where I'm getting lighter. So I'm getting better. So is that like, what should progression look like on a cut, especially when you're starting to kind of get into the thick of it?
Dude, that's great. I mean, if you're still even thinking about maintaining strength at this stage, 20 pounds down, that's fantastic. How long have you been dieting for?
Since January 31st.
So it's like 20 weeks, 20 pounds?
Yes.
Good for you, man. That's pretty much perfect.
Yeah, I think I did the math. I think I was losing about 1.3 pounds a week. I can't remember.
Good.
Exactly.
Good for you. That's a reasonable to bordering on fast rate of weight loss, which is perfect.
Yeah.
No, it sounds like you're doing everything right. What I do is this is more for either contest prep clients or for people who are doing faster rates of weight loss, or long diets. Like, again, it would be valid for you right now. I set myself a target of, say, I don't want to lose more than 10% of strength, because I think at that stage, it's usually a sign that it's probably not muscle loss just yet, but it's usually a sign that you're not well fed going into the sessions and you need a bit of a break. Now, I know that most people seem to think these days muscle loss is hard to impossible, but if your performance is down, then you can't realistically tell me you're maintaining muscle. I'm not sure I can believe that. So if you were previously benching 100 kilos and you're now benching 90 and you carry on doing that for months on end, you're going to end up with the physique of a 90 kilo bencher. So I just don't think it's realistic to say you're not going to lose muscle. So I think once you've passed the 10% mark, we should stop, do a maintenance break, eat our maintenance for roughly 2 weeks, and then continue with the diet. Within those 2 weeks, your strength will regain rapidly. And we go back to a decent maintenance, push your strength back up, mitigate some of the losses, and then go on. And it doesn't just have to be 2 weeks, it can be 4 weeks. There's no rush to diet, particularly if you don't have a competition. And on that note, actually, just an additional point, one of the key one of the key stresses in a prep is the time constraint. This is what causes people to go nuts. I've seen people not be able to maintain very lean body weights, body fats, because there's a deadline, then reapproach that lean body weight without a deadline and hold it without any effort. One of my old clients, Mark, he walks around with a six-pack year-round now. And I think, and the first time we did it, he was struggling massively because we were doing it for a competition. And there was a date in mind. I think the pressure is now off. He's able to just enjoy walking around lean. And he's a pretty special client. I mean, I don't think many people have the same genetics as he does. But I mean, I'm another case in point. I walk around a lot leaner now than I used to, than I ever have. And I think part of it is what the deadline causes quite a lot of stress. So for yourself, Damien, I know you want to get off the cut, but I think it's difficult to really say this but view it as more of a journey. And I know that's a really trite sort of expression, but
no, I get that.
Yeah. And I think if you need a break, take yourself a 2 to 4 week break, eat at maintenance, and then you can always come back and finish your job at that stage.
I was thinking for me, like I gave myself kind of not a deadline, but just a time, like at June 1st, I was going to kind of reassess where I'm at and and maybe just do like a maintenance phase for a little bit. Cause then we'll see, like if I'm at like 14% or whatever, like I don't know what my percentage is going to be at, but I'll check it, see where I'm at, see how I'm feeling. Cause I'm already visually looking a lot leaner. And we were talking about like the psychological aspect. It's like, oh, I do have some muscle under this fluff, which is kind of nice when you've been working hard and you finally start to see it.
How much do you weigh now?
I weigh 186.
At what height?
I think I'm 5'10".
You're like me. You're okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah, 5'10", 5'11". I think I'm
probably going to be looking pretty lean.
Looking pretty lean.
If you like, send me a picture on my Instagram and I'll take a look and we'll kind of see.
I'll send you a shirtless pic.
Yeah. Only a coach could get away with soliciting a shirtless pic. Yeah. Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll ask you what my body fat percentage is.
Yeah. They'll give us an idea, I think, and then maybe look at some kind of maintenance break in a couple of weeks, come back to it potentially. But you want to, once you're full swing into a cut, you want to make sure you finish it because it's hard to build up that momentum. And if you're rocking it, just keep rocking it, I say, for a while, even if there's a break involved.
Yeah, because I'm not too worried. Like even if I started my bulk in like August or September, I don't mind waiting. I'm 29. I hope to have like my peak physique at like 36.
Oh yeah,
I got some time.
yeah. You got ages. That's good. It's good.
Cool, man. Well, we've been talking for a while. We should probably wrap this up. I definitely want to do this again, though.
Cool. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I could probably pick your brain for like 5 hours, but I'm not quite on that Joe Rogan 3-hour level yet. All right, buddy. Well, before we wrap this up, if you just want to let people know where they can find you, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I'm mostly on YouTube. That's where you're going to get most of my content. I also have a podcast, which is about 4 years old this year. And my main thing is coaching. So, I do coaching for strength, physique, contest prep as well. So feel free to get in touch for that. I am bordering on the point where I'm going to have to start saying no to clients. So it's probably a good time to get in contact if you do. Most of the clients I take on, they end up being quite long-term because at this stage, I've been doing it for a while and I kind of know how to treat people. So yeah, if you're interested in that, whatever your goals are, get in touch and we can talk. And I usually have some kind of option that people can work with. So yeah, go ahead and do that. But just find me on YouTube. Instagram is another one. Go onto my website, fazlifts.com, for any of those inquiries. But either get in touch for whatever or just say hi. It's nice to speak to people too.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me.
Cool. Thank you, Damien.